Hey there, YouTube. How are you all doing this weekend? It is crazy hot here in South Alabama. Way too hot for early June. I don't know. This is going to be a long, hot summer, but that's all good. I was cynical for a very large portion of my life. I was never cynical to the point, I wouldn't say I was cynical to the point where I ever let it really get me bitter, but I just found that it just, there were, at some point, I don't remember when in the last 10 years, I just decided I didn't want to live like that anymore. I enjoy watching on TikTok these little clips from Ted Lasso. I haven't watched the show yet. I've just watched a clip here, clip there. I think I did watch one episode one time. I forgot where I watched that, but it's just, and some people think that show is corny just because of this guy's outlook on life. But I just think it's a nice way to go through life. He basically sees the good in people. He's very forgiving. He's got a saying, I wrote this one down, it's the happiest people who have the best chance of success. And I just kind of got into a thought pattern over the last few days about cynicism. And I think about people too, and I think that's probably why I never got completely bitter, a bitter cynic about things, because I grew up on Mr. Rogers. And if you ever have watched Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, you'll know he was just about one of the most positive people that you'll ever see. And he always looked for the good in people. I came across this article that I thought was real good, and I thought I'd share it with you. I read it myself earlier this afternoon. And like a lot of the things that I'll share when I have something to read to make a point, I just read it and then immediately I know this is something that probably needs to be shared. It's just a good thought. So, live like the ancient cynics. Modern cynicism traps you in an unhappy cycle. The original version will set you free, by Arthur C. Brooks, and I'll put a link down below because I'll probably omit a couple of pieces because it's a longer article. There are a growing number of Marxists today, by which I mean the followers of Groucho, not Karl. Whatever it is, I'm against it, Marx sang in his 1932 film Horse Feathers. I don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway. What was satire then is ideology today. Cynicism, the belief that people are generally morally bankrupt and behave treacherously in order to maximize self-interest, dominates American culture. Since 1964, the percentage of people who say they trust the government to do what is right just about always or most of the time has fallen 53 points, from 77 to 24%. Sentiments about other institutions in society follow similar patterns. Whether cynicism is more warranted now than ever is yours to decide. But it won't change the fact that the modern cynical outlook on life is terrible for your well-being. It makes you less healthy, less happy, less successful, and less respected by others. The problem isn't cynicism per se, it's that modern people have lost the original meaning of cynicism. Instead of assuming that everyone and everything sucks, we should all live like the ancient Greek cynics who rebelled against convention in search for truth and enlightenment. The original cynicism was a philosophical movement likely founded by Antisthenes, a student of Socrates and popularized by Diogenes of Sinope around the 5th century BC. It was based on a refusal to accept the assumptions and habits that discourage people from questioning conventional dogmas and thus hold us back from the search for deep wisdom and happiness. Whereas a modern cynic might say, for instance, that a politician is an idiot and thus his policies aren't worth considering, the ancient cynic would examine each policy impartially. The modern cynic rejects things out of hand. That is stupid. While the ancient cynic simply withholds judgment. This may be right or wrong. Modern cynicism has come to describe something antithetical to its previous meanings. A psychological state hardened against both moral reflection and intellectual persuasion. The University of Houston's David Mazzella wrote in The Making of Modern Cynicism. There were no happiness surveys in Antisthenes' time, so we can't compare the ancient cynics' life satisfaction with that of those around them who did not share their philosophy. We can most definitely conclude, however, that modern cynicism is detrimental. In one 2009 study, researchers examining negative cynical attitudes found that people who scored high in this characteristic on a personality test were roughly 5 times more likely to suffer from depression later in life. In other words, that smirking 25-year-old is at elevated risk of turning into a depressed 44-year-old. Modern cynics also suffer poorer health than others. In 1991, researchers studying middle-aged men found that a cynical outlook significantly increased the odds of death from both cancer and heart disease, possibly because the cynics consume more alcohol and tobacco than the non-cynics. In one 2017 study on middle-aged Finnish men, high cynicism also predicted premature mortality. Although both of these studies involved only men, nothing suggests that the results are gender specific. Adding insult to injury, people tend not to respect cynics. Writing in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, Journal in 2020, psychologists found that cynical attitudes lead to being treated disrespectfully, possibly because cynics tend to show disrespect to others, leading to a vicious cycle. You won't be surprised to hear then that cynical people also earn less than others. Scholars writing in 2015 found that even after correcting for gender, education, and age, the least cynical people saw an average monthly increase in income of about $300 over 9 years. The most cynical saw no significant income increase at all. The authors explained this pattern by noting that cynics are more likely to forego valuable opportunities for cooperation and consequently less likely to reap the benefits of joint efforts and mutual help. In other words, being a misanthrope is costly. To improve your well-being, you shouldn't merely try to avoid cynicism in all its forms. Instead, try to become a true cynic in its original sense. The ancient cynics strove to live by a set of principles characterized by mindfulness, detachment from worldly cravings, the radical equality of all people, and healthy living. If this sounds like Christianity or even Buddhism, it should. Greek philosophers, including skeptics who were contemporaries of the cynics, were probably influenced by Indian traditions when they visited the subcontinent and out with Alexander the Great, and in the following centuries, the ideas of cynicism and its offshoot, Stoicism, heavily influenced early Christian thought. The modern cynic is miserable because he is enchained to the outside world, which oppresses him because it is corrupt. The ancient cynic, by contrast, is happy, not because she thinks the outside world is perfect, it obviously is not, but because she chooses to focus on the integrity of her interior world, over which she has control. One famous and perhaps apocryphal story summarizes the power of this latter way of living. Diogenes, the philosopher who popularized cynicism, was known for showing no bias toward any party or clique, and was thus not well liked by those in power, who could have given him a comfortable life. One day a philosopher named Aristippus, who was much favored by the royalty, found Diogenes in the task of washing vegetables, a low and disdained food for the ancient Greeks. Far from being ashamed of his paltry diet, Diogenes reminded Aristippus, if you had learned to eat these vegetables, you would not have been a slave in the palace of a tyrant. If you want to be a good cynic and a happier person, learn to eat your vegetables. They may not seem like a sumptuous feast to the people around you, but you'll find that they nourish you far more than the empty calories of social conformity. Interesting little article there. Like I enjoyed reading it, and I just kind of I don't want to. You just don't want to go through life like that. It's just I see it all the time on TikTok in comment sections. The way people are just always writing things on social media, and it just seems like the whole world is pissed off about something, cynical about everything, and mostly unhappy. So back to what they said at the very end of that, it's like just focus on the things, even though there's stuff out there that we don't like, focus on the things that we can control. And you know, don't have an unhappy life just because you have this perception of the world. So anyhow, just some scattered thoughts today. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Have a great rest of the weekend. I'll see you here real soon. Peace.